Here we are taking a look at our practice test for chapter 7.4, 7.5 sections. Let's give it a whirl. First thing we need to do is simplify some of these radicals. Let's break up 24 into 4 times 6. If I broke it into 8 and 3, neither one of those is a perfect square. We're looking for numbers that are perfect squares, and 4 is that. When I bring that 4 out, the square root of 4 is 2, and the 6, which is not a perfect square, stays under. So my answer is 2 square roots of 6. For 27, I'm going to break it into 9 and 3, because 9 is a perfect square. When I bring the 9 out, it becomes a 3 outside, because the square root of 9 is 3, and this 3 has to stay under. So my answer is 3 square roots of 3. When we do 32, and there's an 8 out front, we can break up 32 into 8 and 4, or 16 and 2. Both the 4 and the 16 are perfect squares, so I want to pick the larger of the two. So I'm going to pick the 16 and 2 version. When I bring out the 16, it becomes a 4, and the 2 stays under. Simplifying, 8 times 4 is 32 square roots of 2. In question number 4, they're asking us just to do the conjugate. If we don't know what the word conjugate means, it's the same terms with the opposite sign in there. And our conjugate is pretty important when we rationalize denominators that have a radical in it. So we're going to just say 5 plus the square root of 6 is our conjugate. On number 5, we're going to take 8 square roots of 3 minus the square root of 3. We need to remember that if there's no number in front, it's a 1. So 8 minus 1 would give me 7 square roots of 3. The radical part doesn't change. We treat it just like a variable. On number 6, we have to do some simplifying. We know this one is 4 times 3, and we have already done this one once, 9 times 3. So if I take the square root of the 4, I get 2 outside, square root of 3, plus the square root of the 9 comes out as a 3, and the square root of 3 stays there. Since they have the same radical part, then we can add them together. 2 plus 3 is 5 of these square roots of 3. Down here on number 7, we're going to break up our 24 differently this time. Remember above we split it into the 4 and the 6 because we're doing the square root of that one. In this one, since we're doing a cube root, we're going to break it into 8 and 3 because 8 is in the cube root file. So then if I take 5 times and 375, I'm going to break that up into 125 times 3 because 125 is in that line on your card for cube roots. So now if I simplify the cube root of 8, I get 2 cube roots of 3 minus, if I bring out the 125, I get the 5 times the 5 that's already out there, cube root of 3. Since we have the same radical part, we can now take 2 minus, this is 25, 2 minus 25 gives me negative 23 cube roots of 3. For this one, again, we have to simplify first. If I take the square root of 4, it becomes a 2 times what's out there, which gives me 12x square root of 2, because that's left over. When I do this, I'm going to split it into 120, or 162 is 81 times 2 times x squared. Let's bring out everything I can there. Square root of 81 is 9. The square root of x squared is x, leaving me with that. I have the same radical and variable parts, so I can put them together. 12x square root 2 plus 9x square root 2 gives me 21x square root 2. Notice that the x square root 2 part doesn't change when we actually add. In number 9, when I have a number out front and I'm multiplying, I get square root of 6 plus the square root of 18. We need to make sure we check our answers to see if anything can be simplified. We know 18 is 9 and 2 because we did that one earlier. And I'm going to simplify that to square root of 9 is 3, square root 2. So my answer would be square root of 6 plus 3 square root 2. On number 10, we need to notice the number out front times the number out front. So 5 times 3 is 15. And the square root number times the square root number gives me 6. On the second one, minus sign comes down. 5 times 4 is 20. Square root 3 times square root 3 is square root 9. Again, we have to check to make sure if we can simplify. Our first term, 15 square root of 6, cannot be simplified, but the square root of 9 is the same as 3 outside, so I get 20 times 3, which is minus 60. Number 11. Because we have binomial times binomial, we're going to FOIL. First times first gives me the square root of 6. Outside times outside gives me the square root of 16. I recognize that. I'm going to simplify it in my next step. Square root of 15 and square root of 40. Well, the square root of 6 doesn't simplify, but the square root of 16 we recognize as being 4. Square root of 15 doesn't simplify, but the square root of 40, I recognize that as 4 times 10. The square root of 4 is 2 root 10. So when I write my answer over here, I'm going to write square root of 6 plus 4 plus the square root of 15 plus 2 square roots of 10. For number 12 here, we have a binomial squared. Binomial squared means to multiply it by itself. So I'm going to rewrite it as binomial times binomial. So when I FOIL this, I get square root of 36. I'll simplify that in the next step. Outside times outside gives me negative square root of 18. Inside times inside gives me negative square root of 18. And last times last, negative times negative, gives me the positive square root of 9. Let's start simplifying here. We know that the square root of 36 is the same as 6. Square root of 9 is the same as 3. 6 plus 3 is 9. If I have a square root of 18 and a square root of 18, I have 2 square roots of 18. But the square root of 18 can be simplified. We've done that already once. That's 9 times 2. If I bring my 9 out, it becomes a 3 because you take the square root of it when you bring it out. So 3 times the negative 2 that's already out there gives me negative 6. And my 2 is left over. So 9 minus 6 square roots of 2. Now, could have I simplified this to 3 root 2 and 3 root 2 to start with and then added them together? Well, 3 root 2 and 3 root 2, both negative, would have given me the same thing. So you can either simplify first or add first and then simplify. They come out to the same answer. Good luck on the front. I'll be on the back side.